a moment of silence for Jason Ade, who lost his life. Queried probable cause of being hounded to death by British media. So I'm starting my session, my video today, with a 1 minute of silence for him. So do join me, and I hope, Jason, wherever you are, may you keep resting on. And I wish the family, I feel so sorry for them, and I do pray that God will give them the grace to bear this loss. Let's spend 1 minute silence for Jason. May you rest in peace, Jason Ade. Amen. And I wish your family the fortitude to bear this loss, and your children, I can't even imagine what they're going through. All right, guys, let's start today's session. Today, I've chosen a niche. I think I've chosen a niche because if you look through my page, I've been all over the place. But I've chosen a niche to share my investment journey as a mom living in the UK. Now, I started my investment journey like 3 years ago, and bear in mind that I've always known that there are other ways of making money through investment, stock and shares, trading, which when I moved into to the UK in 2017, I did find ways, in fact, I didn't know how to go about my investment journey, so I was using Bamboo to invest, but I didn't completely understand how it works. And as far back as 2018, no, 2020, I started my investment journey with Bamboo, and I had shares like Nvidia stock, Microsoft stock, and some other stocks. It wasn't much, but I think it amounted to about 600k worth of stock. And one thing I didn't understand was how patient and not timing the market is. So when I noticed that my stocks were dropping in amount, and I quickly sold off all my shares. And also what motivated me to sell off was I started hearing stories about Bamboo, and you know how Nigerian fintech companies start off stuff and then they close down or you lose money. So when those rumors started, I quickly sold all my shares. Imagine having Nvidia stock as far back as then, before it now went global and Nvidia was everywhere. And I sold my stock before when I heard those rumors, and held on to my money. So that was one of the mistakes I made. And then I started again after I had a patient speak to me about it in 2003. And I was working in endoscopy then. One thing I can tell you is that endoscopy is one of the places that I've worked, and I interacted with human beings who were high achievers. They weren't necessarily ill, they're just coming for diagnostic purposes. So I had a chat with this man. He was working with Hargreaves and Lansdowne, Hargreaves Lansdown, and he told me about investment. He was telling me, I was asking him when I asked him, because sometimes during the endoscopy procedure, your part of the job is to interact with the patient to take off his mind about what's happening. So as we were passing the scope through this man's back passage, he was, I started asking him, what do you do? And he was telling me about he works with Hargreaves Lansdown, about investment. Oh, and my interest, I got definitely interested. I started querying him. How do we invest? How do you invest for your children? And he sort of educated me. He was educating me. He was telling me you can even invest £200 a month. And I'm like, I don't have £200 a month to invest, because one, I was still under tier 2. Me and my husband was doing opposite shifts, just to meet up. The childcare expenses were there. And he said, you mustn't necessarily have £200. You can start with, even if it's £50 a month, you can start. You don't have to wait. Start for your children. You can do £50 for yourself and £20 for your children, and it pays out long term. And he went ahead to tell me that I mustn't necessarily use, he's not trying to recruit me to use Hargreaves Lansdown. He's not here for marketing purposes, and he's not part of the marketing team anyway. I can choose any company that I wish to use. So I went ahead to watch other YouTube videos. People talk about it. I think Vanguard, but when I watch it, in fact, I did not have an idea of how it works. It felt so complicated to me. So I went back to Hargreaves Lansdown, browsed them, and opened an account with them. And that was how I started my investment journey in the UK 2023. And along the line, to tell you the truth, I've learned so many things on my own. I've made mistakes. In fact, I wrote a book on my journey, which I'll try and attach the Payhip link there. If you're interested, if you fancy hearing the full story of how I started, then the link will be there in the comment section for you to click on, or on this video. So that was how I started, and along the line I have learned so many lessons in terms of stock and shares ISA, cash ISA, junior ISA, so many things I've learned about on this my journey. And I also tell you the story of how, in fact I told that story in my book, of how I made about 6k that I added to my house deposit while living in the UK. This is money that wasn't worked for. It was a turning point for me at that point, that actually, I wouldn't say, people say it's what do you call it, passive income. Yeah, I didn't have to do any physical work. Considering from a nursing background, we know how hard it is to work as a nurse. And for me to make that amount just sitting at home, invested in a stock that I believed in and had that return, that was the turning point. That was when I actually understood, oh really? So this is how this works. And ever since then, I've not looked back. Hello guys, my name is Lillian Neka, an Igbo girl, mom of 3, living in the UK, who started her investment journey in the UK. I started with Hargreaves Lansdown, and I will explain to you, some of the benefits. These are some of the things, I also explained in my book. And I'll be starting this series to explain how I started, lessons that I've learned, the money that I've lost, money that I've made, and how I'm going to continue and progress with my investment journey. So please, if this is something you want to hear, if it's something that has been confusing you have any questions, you don't know where to start, how to start, click the subscribe button and follow me. Now I'm giving you a reason to start following me, because I'll be giving you a first person's account on how I started my investments. And it's not going to be so this is something I've personally experienced. I'm not a financial expert, because you may be wondering, I haven't learned anything special. You don't need any special qualification to start your investment journey. I'll be doing that series, and hopefully every week I'll be dropping one video for you to understand what investment is all about. Remember, this won't be a financial advice because I'm not in a position to give you a financial advice. It's my own personal experience and my personal journey as I'm also going along to learn, and I'm open to people, co-hosting. We're talking about how we're going to make it and how we're going to keep investing and looking at how we can, harness the benefits of our investment journey. So do click the subscribe button and subscribe to this girl's page. If you have any suggestion on what you want me to talk about, even though it's still early in the series, you can put it in the comment section. I love you all and I hope you will subscribe to hear this my story. Okay,